The saying goes, if you shoot for the moon and miss, at least you land amongst the stars. And today I'm talking to one guy who has seen both the moon and stars up close. Winston Scott is a former Navy pilot and astronaut who is now spending his career educating others, inspiring us all along the way, and breaking down barriers in more ways than one. Winston Scott, thank you so much for joining me here at Community Matters Cafe. I am thrilled that you are here with us.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. I tell you what, I'm enjoying the coffee, enjoying the pre-conversation. I know this is going to be a fun show.
I know it's going to be great. He and I have already been talking before we even came on the air here, and I'm excited because there's so much to cover in your career. I mean, from being an incredible member of the Navy, being a pilot there, to walking on the moon, to now educating others on what the space world looks like today is just incredible. So I think I'll start with a classic and just take us back to the beginning when you were stepping into the military, but long before that, what you were like as a boy. I know you've said in other interviews that you were the one playing with batteries, taking things apart, putting them back together. But how do you feel like that really played a part in who you've become as an astronaut?
Well, absolutely. In fact, I'll take you back and give you a context that many people don't realize. I grew up in segregated schools. Mm-hmm. People think segregation in America was way, but it's not all that far back. Mm-hmm. So my school's in Miami, born and raised in Miami, Florida, so big city boy. Schools was segregated up through ninth grade. Schools integrated, and then we transferred over to what had historically been the predominantly white high schools. So 10, 11, and 12 were integrated. So as a kid, a youngster growing up, I was always interested in technology. I liked knowing how things worked. You know, batteries, motors, electricity, electronics, and so on. And like most kids of the day, especially boys, I was interested in airplanes and spaceships and all, but it was something that you saw on TV. It did not appear to be a reality to me, a reality for me. It wasn't until I got to college and was introduced to engineering that I began to formally study technology. I went to school really to study music. I was a very good musician. I went to Florida State University on a music scholarship, and then began to learn about engineering while in college. The Navy afforded me the opportunity to further my technical education. So I went into the Navy as an aviation candidate, pilot candidate, earned my Navy wings and flew for the Navy. The Navy sent me back to school for additional education in engineering, flew for the Navy some more, got into research, development, testing, evaluation, then selected by NASA. So that's a whole lot of years all condensed into about 3 minutes worth of summary.
That was an impressive boilerplate. I mean, I don't think ChatGPT could have done any better. That was impressive to see. And there's so much that you have done, but something that you said right at the beginning, I think is so special, and I do want to talk about it if you're comfortable, but growing up in a space that was segregated, like you said, until ninth grade, like I think we like to push it way back, and it's like, oh, well, that was so long ago, and the reality is that it wasn't. But
that's right.
How was that going into high school, a very formative year as a man of color, as a black man, going into education that you had every single right to have, but you knew a lot of people didn't want you to have it?
Well, it was an adjustment, no doubt about it, because the culture of the school was totally different from what I had come from. And I remember I say I was a musician, so I was part of the band program in both schools. So even the music that we played was different. So it was an adjustment, but we understood that the integration was a good thing. That's what we wanted. We wanted to break down barriers and have everybody begin to live and work together. It was an easy adjustment from the student perspective. I mean, my friends and I moved into the school. We started playing sports. We played in the band. We were in the chorus. We were whatever. The kids all got along well. It's a little bit of indifference from many of the teachers as I look back on it. Yeah, they didn't appear to they didn't deliberately do things against us, but they did not deliberately help us as they should have. One teacher stood out, and that was my band director. That's why I say I got into Florida State University. My band director at the time recognized my talent. He actually made a phone call to the Florida State University College of Music, spoke to the dean. I was accepted as a music student, no audition or anything. So here's a man that went out of his way to reward or support what he saw was exceptional talent.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a big adjustment, but
Yeah.
the life is about adjustments.
Yeah.
It's about making adjustments.
And that's so true. And like you said, remembering that one person who stood up and stood out for you,
Yes.
I think is incredible. And it just reminds us that in the world where we hear the word influencer a lot and we kind of picture it as like, get ready with me, here's the best lip gloss, like here's pants that won't make you look fat, all that kind of stuff. An influencer is really someone who has the ability to change the lives around them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we all have influences in our lives, and we should recognize those influences and thank them for what they do for us.
Mm-hmm.
But, we have to earn it. We have to prepare ourselves to be helped.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that falls on the individual. And it behooves young students to take that perspective. Also, we live in a world now where a lot of people promise us free stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do anything. We don't give it to you free. No, there's no such thing as free.
Right.
You work for it, you earn it, you prepare for it, and somebody will step up and support you and help you along the way.
Yeah. And I know we can look at that a lot because things do seem to happen so quickly
Yes.
for some people now. And I go back to that social media lens. But there's one thing that you know how to do, and it is build something, whether that's through your engineer or where that's just steps. Because somewhere like Navy, like NASA, I would imagine it's a very process driven.
Yes, absolutely.
You don't just get to shoot to the
That's
top.
right.
You literally have to train,
That's
pass
right.
tests, work at certain
Exactly.
things. So
Exactly.
what did you learn about yourself along the way in how to work within that process to make sure you got to the next step, even when things were challenging?
I think the biggest thing we have to learn about ourselves is to have the confidence in ourselves that we can make those next steps. Too often we have influences in society that are negative, and they tell us what we cannot do. Or somewhere along the line, we have to understand that each and every one of us has the ability inside himself or herself to overcome those challenges, to make that leap to the next level. And next level can be intimidating.
Yes.
If we think about it too much. So the biggest lessons we learn is what it is about ourselves down inside that makes us move forward and helps us to not give up when we face a stumbling block. Because everybody faces stumbling blocks. That's what life is all about. It's about overcoming challenges, whether you're black, white, green, blue, old, young, men, women, it doesn't matter. We all face stumbling blocks, and we have to learn to overcome and not give up.
What was the stumbling block along your journey that really got you where you were just like, you know what? Had it, and you just really, you had to really want to get past it.
There was nothing that made me say, had it, that I was going to give up. It's just that there's another stumbling block. By God, I'm going to get this. I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to try it again. Didn't work right the first time. I'm going to try it again. If I need some help, I'll go over here and get some help. But I'm just going to keep pounding on that obstacle until I overcome it. And there were many, but again, they're not mine. Weren't so much worse than anybody else's. Everybody faces difficulties of some kind. And, they can be racial, they can be academic, they can be financial, they can be health-wise, but there were quite a few along the way that
I love that Scott response.
You know what?
He's like, you know what? He's like, nothing. He's like, I'm an engineer. I built something to go around and go over to break it in half.
I'll tell you one. I don't think about this much anymore, but it's kind of interesting. When I went into aviation officer candidate school, this is back in 1973, so it was a while back, tail end of the Vietnam War. Very few African Americans in naval aviation. The thing that caused black students to wash out was swimming. Most of us we don't know how to swim. There are no swimming pools in many minority neighborhoods. So we come into aviation officer candidate school not knowing how to swim. And of course, if you're a naval aviator, you're going to operate over water.
Right.
The swimming requirements are quite formidable. So when I entered my class, there were two African-American students in the class, myself and a guy from California. We were both on remedial swim. All the other guys had passed and gone on, but we were spending our extra time off doing basic swimming, learning the strokes, learning to tread water, learning the drown proof, and learning the survival. But we both hung in there and learned, and we passed the swimming requirements. So, but a lot of black students did not. So that may seem like a simple example, but it's a real obstacle that knocked a lot of people out.
Well, I think it's one of those things too where, like you said, it's something simple, but it's also such a big magnifying glass on recognizing a privilege. It might be something that everyone else just grew up with because you went to the YMCA, you had your swimming lessons, but like you said, a lot of minority neighborhoods did not have swimming pools and they were not permitted in white swimming pools. I mean, it's a world that I can't personally fathom, but like you said, it wasn't that long ago. So when people are looking at the swimming pools of today in terms of just access to education, access to certain skill sets, what are you kind of hoping for? Like when somebody sees that hill, when somebody sees their own version of the swimming pool? What helped you get back in the pool, even though you knew that was challenging?
Well, what helped me get back in the pool is first of all, that I knew I could do it with the appropriate help. And our swimming instructors there at Naval Air Station Pensacola were there to help. The swimming instructors were there. If I needed extra help, which I received, the instructors were there to help me along. And that's what people have to realize. I think we have to not put up artificial barriers and say that the only person who can help me has to look like me. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
The person doesn't have to look like you.
Yeah.
Anyone
Absolutely.
can help anyone. I don't care how you look. So we as minorities and women have to be sure we don't erect that barrier. I see a lot of my own people putting that barrier up. That if you don't look like me, then you can't help me. Well, that's simply not true. So.
Yeah. And I love that you say that too, because I think in the world that we're in now, I know I personally would always want to be sensitive to it. I would never want to position myself as kind of like what they call that white savior, but I want to be there. I want to be available for anybody I can help with anything. So if we see someone that we want to offer help to, and like you said, maybe it's something as simple as we look different, we came from different places, but you said two things. You said we have to be ready to offer help, but we also have to be ready to receive help.
We have to be ready to receive help, and we have to be ready to ask for help when we need it. If I need extra help, I need to come to you and say, can you help me with this? Would you please help me? That means I have to break down barriers inside of myself and ask for help and be ready to receive it. Absolutely.
Did my boss call you? Because she says I'm the worst at asking for help, but literally my first phrase as a little girl was, I do it myself, which sounds great if you want to go out there and be like an independent woman. However, like you said, we can also cut ourselves off of a lot of opportunities if we're only willing to go at it alone.
Absolutely. And we grow up hopefully and realize that nobody can do anything totally alone. We can say that we want to, but we all need help.
Yeah.
We all, somewhere along the line, if we're going to be successful, we're successful because somewhere along the line, someone helped us. What is the old phrase of the book? No man is an island, or no one is an island. We all need help somewhere along the line, and we all receive help. And hopefully we all return that help to others as we mature and are successful and so on. So, absolutely.
So, I know that you had to have a lot of that teamwork along the way. And there's no way I have someone who's literally touched the moon in front of me without talking about your time in space and the work that went into that. But so much of that is teamwork. Like you grew up loving space, like just thinking about it, watching every single movie that I could because it was really fascinating to me. But you always see in the movies where it's like something's going to happen, but the team comes together. Something happens, then the team comes together.
Absolutely. Teamwork is what it's all about, no matter what we do, even from going back to band in high school or sports in high school, naval aviation, space flight. Everything is about teamwork, and we have to. And teamwork is about, first of all, breaking down barriers, about breaking down artificial barriers. When I was selected as an astronaut, I reported to Johnson Space Center as an astronaut candidate, a rookie. We all astronaut candidates. And we had international astronauts in my class. There were 19 Americans, but we had 2 Canadians. We had a person from France, a person from Italy, and a person from Japan. Now, when I first got there, you just begin to meet people.
Right.
And I remember, okay, that's Koichi from Japan. And that's Mauricio from Italy. And that's Jean-Francois from France. But pretty soon, you get to know each other. The barriers come away, and it's no longer Koichi from Japan. It's just Koichi.
Yeah, just Koichi.
And it's no longer Jean-Francois from France. It's just, actually, we gave him a nickname, Billy Bob. We figured Jean-Francois is too long, but he needs the American name, so it's Billy Bob. And then there was Mauricio from... So the barriers come down when we get to know each other, we spend time together, and we realize that we have more in common than we have in differences. And that's the fundamentals of teamwork.
Yeah, amen. One more time for the people in the back. We really do. We have so much more in common than we don't. And I love the fact that transcends over any kind of career path. So you started as this rookie candidate. In my head, I'm like, this is your national audition. This is the Broadway of space here. And what does that process look like? Because it's a long way from like, hey, you can do this, and you've gone through the Navy. You're also maintaining your rank there at the Navy. They can call you at any time if they still need you, and also your training as an astronaut.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, your first year you're a candidate, and it means you're being accepted as an astronaut, but you have to pass this, like you said, the candidacy year first, your audition. You're kind of taking a look at NASA and say, do I really want to do this? And NASA's taking a look at you and say, do we really want him or her here to do that? And the first year it's kind of like going to college again, because there are a lot lot of academics. You have lectures, you study, you read, but then you begin to use simulators. You learn individual systems first. For example, in my day, it was a space shuttle. So we had to learn the electrical system, the navigation system, aerodynamics, the propulsion system, life support. So you learn all of those systems down to the component level, and then you build up, and pretty soon you're flying simulated missions in the space shuttle. You also have survival training, water survival, land survival, and those of us, you learn to fly the jets that are at NASA, and those of us who come from the military are already qualified in airplanes. We have to get checked out in those airplanes. So it's a long learning process that consists of academics and training per se. You learn things like celestial navigation, orbital mechanics, and it just, the list just goes on and on and on and on. But if you enjoy that stuff, like we geek out on it, it's fun to us. Celestial navigation is fun.
I just hearing the word celestial navigation, I was like, I would take that class. That sounds amazing.
You enjoy it, absolutely. You'd probably be real good at it too.
I was like, I just think that would be incredible. So going from so much of this learning, I think especially like for your first space flight, what were just those feelings leading up to it? Because it's like, okay, we figured this all out. We've done as much on land as we can. But at the end of the day, someone is saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
And you can't get off this ride.
Well, if and when you finish your candidacy, which I did, obviously, I completed my candidate year successfully, and along with my classmates, and we were all designated. Now we are official astronauts. You're not a real astronaut until you fly. But now you're official. You've been accepted. You get a silver pin, and now you're at the next level of training. Kind of like going to sophomore year in college.
Yeah, I was like, okay, so you got the team jacket, you're on the team,
exactly.
We're still on the bench. We haven't got to play yet.
That's right.
Okay.
So you continue training, and it's more and more advanced training, but you also begin to work a ground job. You have collateral duties. For example, one of my first collateral duties was an astronaut support person, which meant I spent a lot of time at Kennedy Space Center. Oh, back up. All active astronauts live and work in Houston at Johnson Space Center.
Right.
But I would spend a lot of time at Kennedy Space Center in and around the actual space orbiter itself. And I would strap the prime crew in, the crew that's going to launch. I was there to prepare the vehicle for them. There are thousands of switches and circuit breakers. I would go out the day before and do switch lists and set the switches and cockpit up for them. Then I was the person that strapped them into the rocket and closed the hatch and moved out. I was the last person to see them. So I spent a lot of time. That was one of my collateral duties. I spent a lot of time at the Cape as an astronaut support person before I actually flew in the shuttle. So your second year there, you begin to work a ground job, whatever it is. And each year, you continue additional training and work in different ground jobs until you are assigned a mission. I was assigned relatively early. I reported in July of 92, and in the end of 94, I was assigned, end of 95, I was assigned my first flight. And once you're assigned to a flight, you drop all other duties. You move into an office with your other crew members with whom you're going to fly, and you begin to focus on training for that specific flight. So now your job on the shuttle is assigned, and you begin to train for that mission. I was assigned as a flight engineer. I'm a pilot by background, so I was part of the flight deck crew, the crew that actually operated the vehicle. But I was also assigned spacewalking. I was a spacewalker. So one of my main jobs is going to be EVA, or spacewalking. So I began to train for the flight and for spacewalking and for the payloads that we're going to take with us. If you're taking a satellite into space, for example, you have to study the satellite. You have to understand its engineering, its design, its systems, and so on, how you work it, how you operate it, and how you redeploy it or retrieve it or whatever. So it's just so much to learn. You never know it all. Even when the day comes to launch, you never know everything. You just got to the point now, okay, we've done enough. The launch day is here. The clock is counting down. Let's get the show on the road.
Man. Figuring some of that out along the way, I think is incredible for something that has to be so tightly and meticulously calculated. So as you've made this first flight, and am I correct? The Endeavor was your first?
Endeavor was my first 9 days in orbit aboard Endeavor. That's right.
So in orbit at that point, this is just something I never thought I would get to ask as a host, but what was space like?
People ask that. I have to laugh because there are no words I can say to make you see it or feel it. I describe it. Space is absolutely, it's incredible. It's amazing. And you see Earth from a different perspective than you've seen it before. I remember the first time I looked out of the orbiter down at the Earth. I also remember the first time on a spacewalk Well, I'm outside floating around and I look over and down at the Earth. You get a sense of how high you are and how fast you're moving. See, we're moving at 17,500 miles per hour. And when you look down at the Earth, you see exactly how fast you're moving over the Earth. So space is an amazing place. It can be very intimidating, but it's also fascinating. We go around the Earth every 90 minutes. Every hour and a half, we completely circle the globe. So you can look out and see the continents coming. You roll across that entire continent in just a few minutes. Then you cross the next ocean and you see other continents off to the left and right of you. It's just an amazingly incredible place that's so foreign to what you've witnessed being earthbound.
Yeah.
Continuous weightlessness is something you've never felt before. It's fun in a way, but it's also uncomfortable. Your body has to get used to continuous weightlessness. So it's just totally different.
Yeah, I mean, just in my research from people who have talked about space trips, it really seems like all fun and games till someone has to go to the bathroom, which just seems really challenging. But what were some of the fun things, like just the inner kid in you that made it to space? What were some of those memories for you?
Yes, those memories are playing around in zero gravity. When you're a kid, your mom says, don't play with your food.
Yeah.
When you get to be an astronaut, you can play with your food. Only when you get to be an astronaut. Your food's floating all over the place and we're playing games with M&M's candy and so on. So that's some of the fun things we do in space. We were in space during one of the Olympic Games. So we make up our Olympics in space.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so you got all these big kids making up Olympic games in space, turning flips and somersaults and see who could do the most spins in space before
great.
you do all kinds of, you kind of go back to the kid in you when you have a few spare moments.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredible. And as you should, because it's, you work so hard to get to that. And obviously while you're up there, everything you're having to monitor and see, because you're in, like you said, this intimidating environment. Like we think the ocean's unforgiving. I can't imagine how unforgiving space is. We can't even send anybody to get you. I mean, I think that's so incredible. What was your perspective on life like when you came back for the first time? Did that change at all?
Absolutely. I don't think you can fly in space and not have it affect you one way or another. And you realize that some of the things, when you come back from space flight, you realize some of the things that we're so serious about and we're so intense about here on Earth are really trivial things that we should not be arguing and fussing about, because we all live on this planet. This is our home. We're all one family. And we really ought to be working together. But some of the things we get worked up over, not just from an international standpoint, international politics, we get worked up over that, and we have people shooting each other and fighting and carrying on. But day-to-day things like getting upset because we're late to an appointment, or somebody cuts us off in traffic, or my electric bill is too high, or my car broke down, or whatever. The things like that we really get worked up over are really pitiful, trivial things that we should not. So when I'm in my day-to-day life, when things come that are somewhat upsetting, I think back on my space flight. I really try to put those things in perspective and realize they're not really that important after all. Those things will work out. Those are trivial things.
Yeah. I think that mindset shift is incredible. Now I know we can't all go to space. Some of y'all can't download a PDF, so we'd have a long way to go to train for this. But how can we, as non-astronauts, non-space people, translate that shift that you had in perspective to our own lives?
I think what we can do as average everyday people is realize that other things in our lives are more important than this trivial thing that's bothering me right now. So for a person who has not been to space, he or she has had other important things happen in their lives, things that are really important, like health, family, maybe children or what relationships, things like that are truly important. And so when the person cuts you off in traffic on the interstate, thinking about, mom is having her 80th birthday or whatever. We're going to have a party this weekend. That's what's important. Or my brother is getting out of the hospital today. That's what's really important. I got a promotion on my job. That's what's important. I'm healthy. I went out and jogged this morning. I took my dog for a walk, Those are the things that are really important. So when the red light keeps me too long, I'm just about to be late for it. Is that really all that important?
Right.
So we all have perspectives in our lives that we need to prioritize, and we can remember those the perspectives.
Yeah, that moment for recalibrating, which I'm sure you had to do with equipment, but it's kind of like that. It's hitting that reset button.
That's right, a reset button, recalibration. And we can all do it. You don't have to go to space to do that. We all have phenomenal things that have happened in our lives. Look at you and your career. Your career, I bet, is a highlight of your life, and I would suspect you marvel at it every day. So when the red light is too long, you can think, you know what? I live a great life. You know, I have a wonderful career. I have millions of followers and people. So,
yeah. I was like, can I actually show you a video I took right before coming here? I was like, we're really going off book here, but I think it perfectly summarizes exactly what you were saying. But this is what I'll share it with everybody. I love that if somebody just stopped me and was like, oh, where are you going? I could say, oh, just going to meet an astronaut who's joining me on my podcast today. Yeah. I wanted to video it, and I said, if someone stopped me right now and asked me where I was going, I could just say, I'm going to meet an astronaut who's joining me on my podcast. And I was like, how blessed am I, that you're willing to share the space with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And so I feel the same way. I read your bio, and I knew who I was going to be talking to. And I was thinking, yeah, this is cool. I'm going to go meet Jana. I'm going to be on her show. So this is fun for me. This is cool. So those are the things that I think we all have to remember so that we don't lose perspective of what's really important in life and what's trivial.
Yeah, you were so positive. I feel like I've been just smiling this big the whole time because you just have such a light about you, and that really just brings me so much joy. And like you said, the perspective of just being able to give back to people, like you just have this honor of humans that radiates from you, and I love that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I'd love to talk about how you're using that in your current career. Earlier we talked about influencers, and now I feel like you're kind of like the space influencer, helping people understand not only where our space program is now, because I think it's changed in so many ways over the years, for the good, for the bad, and it's kind of like everyone has a question mark, like, we love space, but what are we actually doing right now?
Sure, absolutely. In fact, that's a broad category. So I have to sort of break it down into different.
We got that. Break it down for me.
So, I flew during the Space Shuttle days, and of course, between then and now, there's this International Space Station.
Right.
I think most people understand we've had a space station up there for over 25 years, and the people on the station typically stay for 6 months at a time. We went up for weeks at a time. They stay for months at a time. The next big push for NASA, of course, is to go back to the moon. In the 60s, we sent people to the moon during the Apollo program. The next program coming up is called Artemis. Artemis was Apollo's sister in mythology. Apollo put men on the moon. Artemis will put the first woman on the moon.
That's right.
That's right, girl power. So next month, March, is we're scheduled to launch Artemis 2. We'll send people to the moon. They will not go to the surface. It's kind of a dress rehearsal, an end-to-end test. So they'll fly to the moon, orbit the moon, and then come back home. And then Artemis 3, 2 years or so later, will put people on the moon again. So that's the next big project. And the purpose for going to the moon is several reasons we need to go. The first time we went to the moon was for political reasons. We were in the Cold War with what was then the Soviet Union. Now we're going to go to the moon for scientific reasons. We need to learn how to live and work in space long term so that we can eventually find another planet. The Earth will become uninhabitable at some point in time. If the human race is going to survive, we need to find another planet. To find another planet, we need to begin now looking around our own backyard, learning how to go out into space and find these other planets. So that's kind of the big picture. Along the way, everything we learn and do in space benefits people down here. We were talking about celestial navigation, but if we get back to terrestrial navigation, which is celestial also, to find this coffee shop, of course, we load it into our GPS.
Of course.
People might not realize GPS works off satellites. Who put the satellites in space? America's space program. So everything we do.
Thank y'all for that, because I never found my way anywhere. Shout out to them.
Well, people take it for granted. We use a lot of things every day in life that came out of America's space program. So on our way to the space station, to moon, to Mars, and beyond, benefits people here on Earth. So that's kind of the big picture of where NASA is going. In my role right now at the Kennedy Space and Visitor Complex, I'm kind of they call me the resident astronaut because I'm the full-time astronaut there. But the Visitor Complex exists to entertain, to educate, and to inspire, and so on. We're open 363 days a year. There's an astronaut on site every one of those 363 days. So when the general public comes in to visit the visitor complex, they can meet an astronaut. That person will give autographs, take pictures, give lectures, and so on. Those astronauts are all like me. They're retired from active duty, but they have actually flown in space, and they can share their experiences with the general public. So what I do is work to coordinate those visits, the programming, all of those things to make those visits possible.
Oh man. Okay, so when we're visiting, we have a Queen City connection. We can really name drop and feel good about it, which I love. What is the most common question that you get?
You know, you would think the most common question is how do you go to the bathroom, but it really, I think that question is kind of taking a backseat to some of the others. The most common question is esoteric, and it's how does it look in space? How does it feel? That's what people say.
Yeah.
How does it look? How does it feel? And what they want to know, of course, is what we talked about earlier.
Right.
How does a person feel when they go into space? And how does the Earth look from space? That's probably the most common question. The most fun question has to do with the bathroom, and we can talk about that.
I'm sure all the little kids are like, how do you go to the bathroom in space? But my mom watches the show, so she'd be like, why are you talking about bathroom things on the air with an astronaut? But I do think it's something when you think about the logistics, all the things that, you know, as much as I'm not a big fan of gravity due to the fact that it likes to bring everything down, including all the skin I try to keep up and all the things I try to keep up. So for those reasons, I'm not a fan. But when you look at kind of the inverse of that and all of the logistics, just setting something down, I mean, like, people, you know, we all lose our glasses and our pens and our phone here on Earth. I can't imagine if it was floating
our
away from me. If we're holding this and it's, you know, we're taping the mics down and everything like that. But do you have when you look back on these visits, because I'm sure you just have so many, but was there ever just a kid or a person that you were like, like that's an interesting question or perspective?
I'm not sure I followed. Oh, give me that again. Exactly what you're asking. I didn't quite follow.
Oh, you know me. I like to circle the entire movie before I ask a question, so that's on me. But just in the visitors that you've hosted, was there ever a question or a kid that really kind of stumped you and you said like, oh, that's a really interesting take on space or a really thoughtful question?
You know, I've been doing this for so long now, I have to think for a while to remember one that really was something so foreign that it sort of took me by surprise. Most of the questions you hear, you've heard before. Occasionally you'll get something that's very thought-provoking. Sometimes people ask about time, and then I can go into a whole dissertation on time. I don't want to do that here, but they talk about how you measure time in space, and do you get younger in space, and they talk about relativity.
Do you?
So occasionally you'll get questions on relativity. And I get younger in space and so on.
You get younger in space?
Yeah, but it's not, but our speed is so slow. It's not.
Dang it! I was like, well, let's go.
It's not the younger that I used to not need these things. Not that kind of getting younger.
I was calling dibs on the new planet. I was like, well, they should have led with that. Put that on the for sale sign.
But people recently, I'll get questions about aliens. Because remember, Congress has been holding hearings on UFOs. They call them UAPs now, I guess, and the possibility of visiting aliens. A previous president just got asked that question and remarked about aliens. So you get questions like that, but you often get questions on spirituality. How does flying in space affect you from a spiritual standpoint? So I get all those questions, and they're often very thought-provoking.
Yeah, I think that would be so interesting to be able to field all of those. I'm not bearing the lead. You talked about aliens, so let's talk about aliens. Because it's always something that I think, in my personal assumption, I think there's so many things greater, bigger, that exist outside of my knowledge. So I'm just assuming they're out there. I'm assuming there's things that live in the ocean that I haven't met yet. Not that I know that I want to meet everything and everybody. Right. But I would always like to think I'd be a kind hostess if they got here, because don't be rude. So that way they're happy when they meet us. But what was your take? What was your take on all of that?
I believe in the odds. I think I would think most people do. In fact, when people ask me the question, I always turn around and ask the audience.
Yeah.
I'll say, show of hands, how many of you believe there's life someplace else in the universe? And the hands,
1,000%.
almost all will go up. Yeah, I believe in the odds. With the billions and billions and billions of planets in existence, we can't be the only one with life. I think there's life out there someplace.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Now, occasionally, quite often, I'll get a question whether I believe aliens have visited the Earth, and I do not doubt it. There are indications that we have been visiting. I won't use the word evidence, but indications. If you look at some of the cave drawings of prehistoric people, clearly depicting extraterrestrials, things like that. There are indications that we might have been visiting in the past. Who's to say we haven't?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And when you see people, because I'm sure in your line of work too, you see people really rail against this and it's this and it's that. Why do you think we are sometimes so closed-minded when it's like, well, if we haven't seen it, it couldn't have happened, or if we can't particularly process this, it can't happen?
It's very interesting how some people can be, like you said, closed-minded, and I think maybe it's the insecurity inside of them. But I don't understand why they feel that way, but people do. As a matter of fact, just by coincidence, I was in Charlotte many years ago, and we were just visiting, walking down the street, and the flat Earth people were out. They had their table set up and they had their brochures and they were talking about flat Earth. I went over. I didn't say anything about my background, my profession. I simply walked over and engaged with them and took their brochure. But here are people who don't believe the Earth is round. So I cannot explain that. I can't.
I hate that was your last impression of Charlotte.
Well, it's not. That was
good.
not.
I was like, we got a lot of work to do, guys.
No, just that one little incident. I love Charlotte. Been here many times, but just that one incident. But my point is, I can't make sense out of something that makes no sense. So I don't engage in it. I don't argue with people. I listen to what they have to say, and then I move on.
Because I do think, and even your point to not arguing with like that type of person. I think we've all seen that person that's our Facebook friend. We're not sure why we haven't disconnected from them yet, but they're always ranting and raving against something. And you debate whether you're going to go into the comment section and try to talk some sense into this person. But I think your point is that you're so much better served if instead you're reaching out to somebody to say, hey, how's that job search going? How can I help you?
Exactly.
Hey, if you're going to spend your time online, how can we elevate versus fight this battle that somebody doesn't actually want us to bring information to?
Exactly. Yeah, I typically don't engage in those battles. I read a post this morning on social chat. And they caught my attention because the person that posted is a friend of mine, and it was a political rant, and they were going back and forth about a particular incident that I won't go into the details of it. I read 2 or 3 lines, and then I just got off, and I deleted the whole thing.
We're moving on.
I just don't even engage in that. People, for some reason, are very closed-minded, opinionated these days, especially from a political standpoint, and I think that's really bad. I can remember the days when I was younger in undergraduate school, for example, when we engaged in controversial conversations in a courteous manner. We could disagree on things, but not, as they used to say, you can disagree without being disagreeable. When I was in undergraduate school, we had a lot of things that were presented on campus that were controversial, but no one tried to shut anybody down. Everybody had a right to speak. Everybody listened to each other, and we didn't riot or wreak havoc or anything like that. We're to the point now where we have a difficult time disagreeing without being disagreeable.
Yeah. I think there's such an interesting perspective from you, because on the one hand, I see the musician in you. And typically artists are very ethos focused, and they are very spiritual, and they are very, I would say, feeling. And then also you have this engineering part of your brain that is very meticulous and scientifically driven and methodical. So I feel like there's this beautiful merging of these two parts of you. How do you feel like that's helped you navigate some of these things? Because as an astronaut, like you said, the first time we went to space was very politically driven. And a lot of people see the space program still as a very divisive thing politically. So how do you navigate that and make sure that you're getting the message across that we need young scientists to come into this program to care about what life is going to look like when we inhabit another planet?
I'm not sure how to answer that other than I want to navigate it. I want to be an open-minded person, a person who is open to other perspectives, who listen courteously, and I mean, truly listen, not just pretend. You listen, you take it in and you evaluate it. It takes effort on the part of us as individuals to listen to others, especially those with whom we disagree. That's how we learn. Yeah, we learn by listening to people with whom we have different ideas and different perspectives. So it takes a personal commitment to do that. Just like it takes personal commitment to overcome physical challenges, overcome economic or other challenges, to overcome personal challenges, the challenge inside of myself to be dogmatic and know I'm right, and it takes effort to overcome those challenges. And I see it as trying to better myself. And we all should be about trying to better ourselves.
You are so special. This makes me just very, very happy that you're here, because everything you say, I feel like we need to cut and just put as a soundbite somewhere. When you're looking at all of these visitors that come through and you are educating kind of on the next phase of what space looks like, especially for the United States. And I love what you're talking about, as I'm sure all my millennial girls out there who grew up with Xenon and Xenon 2. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, wait, is this an option? Like, we're getting even closer. I look great in metallics. Like, I'm here for it. Let's do it. But really materializing how this is going to happen. What are the paths that you see that we have the most need with the space programming as it stands right now? Like, where are the gaps that we need to fill with people, with education, and with endeavors that are going to get us to the next phase? Yes,
what we really need is support, a political support, because the space program really is political. It's been so politicized, and we need to have political support and unwavering support, such that each administration that comes in doesn't change things. You can't reach a goal if you continuously change the goal.
Right.
Or set one goal and keep it there. What has really brought us on track has been the private commercial space flight entities like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and some of those. You know, if it weren't for Elon Musk and SpaceX, we would be in deep trouble, because the government side is really struggling just a little bit, and it's struggling because our politicians have been inconsistent over the last couple of decades on where they want NASA to go and how to fund NASA and unleashing NASA and letting it do its thing. So the first thing we need to do is unwavering political support, kind of give NASA money and get out of the way and let NASA go do it. Yeah. So that's what we need. And with that will come a strong, robust program with the educational components to it, the research components, the international components, and so on. That's what we need.
Because I think what would be idyllic is to, like you said, all of these things that you had to learn kind of in this first year, but if we could recalibrate some of our education systems to say, if somebody is in the military or they're in university or something and they see space in their future, how can we go ahead and start educating them now on things that will be useful to short track how quickly you're assigned to a mission?
And that is happening. You know, universities are responding really pretty well and putting together space curricula and space programs and so on, so that students can learn now what I learned at NASA. They're beginning to learn it now. So there are a lot of opportunities to do that. Some within formal schools and some outside of formal schools. For example, the Kennedy Space Center has a Center for Space Education. So they put on programs, everything from space camp for kids to programming for teachers to come in and learn. So that is happening. But again, with more financial and economic support, it could really grow and branch out. So absolutely.
I think that's incredible to talk about the fact that that's where it's going, and that you brought up the private space flights, because I was interested to hear your perspective on that, because that was extremely polarizing. Obviously, as a journalist, I mean, Gail went to space. I was like, I thought I was doing pretty well as a journalist, and hoping I'll win an Emmy one day. But when I was like, okay, well, now I got to go to space to be Gail. I mean, this is really next level. So what kind of bridge do you think that's actually building between kind of our traditional picture of a government-run space program and then a privately funded one?
I love it. I absolutely love it. In fact, what you see happening now, I'm proud to say that I was one of the people that pushed for it. What you see happening now in space with the commercialism and the tourism and so on, it didn't just happen overnight. There were many of us who pushed for this 20 years ago.
Wow.
And there was actually pushback. Yeah, there were people that did not want this to happen, but it has happened. I love it. I think the space program, America's space program, and also the access to space for the entire world has to be larger than just governments. And I love what the private commercial companies are doing. The government is really good at funding research, esoteric things, but the government is terrible at doing anything in a cost-effective manner. It takes business people like Elon Musk, Bezos, and some of the others to do things in a business-like, cost-effective manner. And we see it happening. Elon Musk has stepped up, and he's reduced the cost of access to space. He's revolutionized it. And so has Jeff Bezos and other people. I use them because they're the leading examples.
Yeah.
But so it takes a partnership between government and business to make a cost-effective program, and that's what's happening. So I love what Elon Musk is doing and some of the other companies.
To me, that's such an interesting take, but it leads me to think, and maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, but in terms of, like you said, looking at inhabiting another planet, we struggle enough with what barriers are here, who owns what here on Earth. How do we decide what a territory looks like in space, on Mars, on the moon?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
is it backseat rules? If I fits, I sits. Like, how does that even determine politically?
Actually, those things have been discussed for many, many years. In fact, I want to say in the 60s or 70s, there was a space treaty signed, and the United States, of course, was one of the leaders in putting this treaty together. And it said that no one country owns any bodies in space, including the moon and so on. No one owns that.
We're sharing space.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
sharing space. Now, every country in the world did not sign on to it. And I want to start listing a bunch. There's a bunch did, a bunch didn't. Now, there was an addendum to that space treaty, and we did not sign on to it, nor did any other space giants that talked about the mineral rights. So we essentially said no one can own the moon, but we backed away from saying, well, if I get there first and I find these minerals, I own those. So my point is there are treaties that have been put in place. What kind of teeth they have remains to be seen. We're currently in a race with China. And we might not want to call that, but we are. And the race is to get to the moon again first and to sort of stake out our claim to the South Polar region. The concern is that if China gets there first, and China is a political adversary, we know that. If China gets there first, they may put up a sign that says all others keep out. If we get there first, we're not likely to say all others keep out. We like to say we're here first and we're working on it, but you can come in and work too. So the race is to get to the South Pole of the moon first to prevent these conflicts that might arise from land grabbing on the moon and other planets. It's a complicated thing, and those are going to have to be settled politically, not by astronauts who arrive there.
Yeah, I think if it was handled just by the astronauts who arrive there, we actually might have a better shot.
You make a good point.
I think you guys would probably just set it up fine. So maybe we just let y'all handle it.
Maybe so. You make a good point.
I think maybe the treaty just needs to say, let's do better next time. If you want to come to the moon, we just got to do better than we did on this first planet.
Yeah.
I think if we could all agree to that, we could have a really successful moon community.
We have, but in all fairness to us, the U.S., because we got that, we're the only country that's been there. To the moon, we have shared. NASA, the United States is very good at sharing what we have learned. Everything is open to the public. Now, aside from military space missions, but everything NASA has done in terms of exploration, things we've learned, is sharing and open to the whole world. It's not proprietary.
Yeah.
Elon Musk developed his rockets using NASA technology. You can start from ground zero. Other countries have benefited from NASA technology, and so the United States, we're a very generous country, very, very sharing.
Yeah.
Maybe in some areas to the extreme, but we're a pretty generous country.
Yeah, yeah. We're just going to do better in the whole care and keeping of the planet.
We do.
We almost broke this one, so let's just be more careful on the next one. So for you, when you look ahead, and I feel like saying that for you is so on the nose because you've seen so much beyond what we've seen. But what are you hopeful for in this next phase of space, in this next phase of really humankind as you look at it?
What I'm hoping for is that we continue again with the missions that are in front of us, that we don't have any wavering or backtracking. We go to the moon. We put people on the moon. We build permanent presence on the moon. We have laboratories, we have housing, we have schools. We learn how to live on the moon, live and work on the moon. Then I hope we will go off to Mars. That's our first planet to go to, and that we put permanent presence on Mars and learn to live and work there. And I'm hoping that all these things will be more international than they already are. We're international. We still have adversaries in space. And maybe we can somewhere along the line get those adversaries to begin to work with us, and therefore we've broken down some more barriers. And eventually, as I said, we're going to have to find another planet to live on. And the evidence is that any planet that may be inhabitable by humans is trillions of miles away. Thousands of light years, so trillions and trillions of miles away. So we're going to have to find one. It's going to take all of us working together to find it. Otherwise, some point in time, human beings will stop existing.
Well, if we're not here, we can't have coffee and conversation. So we got to make sure that we find another planet to host this podcast on, which I'm happy to do.
Absolutely.
I can't believe how you've contextualized something so beautifally.
Well, you're young enough. You may be doing the podcast on the moon.
Perfect.
10 years from now or whatever.
Perfect. Listen, Gail went, but I hosted on the moon. Okay, so now I have a new goal, which I think is incredible. And like you said, just that continuous pushing of people to look at what they really could do.
Yes.
So when you sit here with me and you're talking about these two different missions to space, I want to say you said you had, is it over 8,000 hours of flight training in one interview? You said?
Airplane flight over almost 9,000 hours.
I mean, so almost 10,000 hours of just aviation excellence. And when you look back to the boy who was taking the batteries out of things, and you were maybe taking your mom's watch apart, and she said, that better be back intact by the time I get home. What does that feel like for you?
It feels good. I've been very fortunate to live such a good life, to have the experiences that I've had, to be able to do the things that I've done, and to continue to do the things that I'm doing. My life is still good. I'm not gone yet. I don't fly in space anymore, but I'm still busy. I still fly a lot. I still pilot. I own an airplane, so I still get to fly. I'm an airplaneaholic. I own more than one airplane. So I have a Piper Saratoga, and then a Piper Arrow, and then a little Cessna 120.
Amazing.
So most of my travel I do myself. But my point is, I feel very fortunate to be able to live the life that I live. And I think I do have an obligation to share it with others, which is why I'm very happy when I'm asked to be on podcasts or interviews or visit schools and share my experience with other people, especially young people. I'm happy. I love talking to all audiences of all ages, but our young people are so inquisitive, so exciting, and so impressionable. Kids are very excited about space, among other things, and I'm happy to share that with others because in that way I think I'm impacting or influencing the future, and I hope that I can influence the future in a positive way by sharing my experiences with students and encouraging students to work hard, to study hard, to accomplish and achieve, that anything is available to them if they work for it. If they don't give up, and that nothing is free. If somebody promises you something for free, you probably run the other way. Life is not free. Nobody gave you this podcast free. You work for it. You started somewhere at the bottom, and you worked your way up to hosting your show. So I try to instill those things in young people, but I try to instill in them the understanding that anything is available. We see so much negativism coming, even from leaders of our country. Some of them preach really victimhood, and they preach negativism to young people, and they should not do that. They should preach empowerment to young people. And that's what I want to do. I want to empower young people to rise as high as they want to rise.
You absolutely are. As you were saying the words "I rise," I was thinking of Maya Angelou's poem "I Rise."
I rise,
and
still
I
rise,
and still I rise, which is just so powerful, because I'm sure there are times in your training and going up, and like you said, going back to your swimming pool story, or just when I see videos of people in those simulators. I mean, that you have that physical or mental stress on you, but just the fact that you continue to overcome that, you have such an incredible outlook on life is beautiful to see. I have two questions for you before I let you go. Number one, obviously, I keep going back to music, because you don't always hear like, oh, I was an astronaut, but I started as a music major. That's just not something you hear every day. So I have to ask you, what's on your playlist? Did you ever have a playlist or like a hype song or something that you just loved?
Actually, yes. I am a musician. I still play regularly, and I took music into space with me. And my favorite is jazz, since I'm a trumpet player. So my favorite trumpeter is Miles Davis.
Oh,
so
incredible.
one of the pieces I took to space with me is a Miles Davis album, in a silent way is what it's called. That was my favorite one that I like to play in space. But I like a variety of all things. I took a variety of music into space with me. Currently, I play regularly in different bands there at the Space Coast, primarily my own band, the Winston Scott Cosmic Jazz Ensemble. And we get booked to play all the time. And the guys that back me up are the professional musicians in the area. I get them as my backup band, and we play regularly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can come for a space tour and then go see you play.
You sure could, depending on when you're there. If the band's playing something, you come here and just play.
Okay. Well, I'm planning a trip. We'll all go. We can. We don't have a space shuttle, but we can take a bus.
And you know what? Let me jump in here again. See, that's another message that I try to get across to young people, that you don't have to do one thing in life.
Yeah.
There's nothing about life that says, if you do this, you can't do that. It's not true. You do anything you want to do. If you want to be a musician and a pilot, be a musician and pilot. If you want to be an athlete and a poet, be an athlete and a poet. You want to be a doctor and a writer, be a doctor and a writer. You don't let people pigeonhole you. I try to tell young people, be broad in your experiences and what you do, and you'll live a very, very, very full life.
Yeah, be multi-passionate.
Multi-passionate, absolutely.
I love that. Now, my last question for you, and it's something I asked all of my guests on Coffee and Conversations, is obviously this whole talk is about brewing a beautiful life, making really bold choices. So I want to ask you, what fills your cup at the end of the day?
What fills my cup at the end of the day is doing what I'm doing now, sharing my experiences with others and having a positive response. That really fills my cup. And then doing the things that I enjoy doing. I still enjoy flying. I enjoy playing music. Tennis is my exercise these days. I started playing tennis at the end of COVID. So that's my physical fitness. If I can do those things during the day, do something for myself to build myself, exercise, music, and so on, and then share my experience with others, I think I've had a pretty full day. Yeah. My family is important. My wife and I have been together for a long time. We have adult children. Our son's he's a Navy fighter pilot.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Runs in the family.
And then we have a granddaughter, daughter and family, and granddaughter live in Florida. And then my brother, and so family is important too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for now being part of this Coffee and Conversations family. I love the fact that you talked about that. This is special. Yay, that's so exciting.
Talk about life changes and shifting us and moving up. This is an example. I don't even know these people, but obviously it's a monumental moment in their lives when they're moving from one point in life advancing to another point in life. Yeah. That's a success story for them.
Yeah, I think that was perfect. Just for all of our people who are listening and couldn't see what was happening, they just announced that we have new people at Community Matters Cafe graduating from this life skills program. And as you know here, this is where people come after a program that they go through to learn front and back of house hospitality. They learn skills, confidence, and self-worth after choosing a life of sobriety. And so this place is really special. I don't think we could end it any better than talking about brewing something bold and beautiful, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Winston Scott, astronaut icon, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
To everybody out there, thank you so much for joining me for Coffee and Conversations. Now, if you want more stories of motivation, inspiration, and empowerment that can fill up your cup when it's empty, no matter where you are, I invite you to subscribe to our channel for more.